So hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Pam Searle, and I'm a member of the LGO admissions team here at MIT. Today's webinar will focus on the LGO internship experience. So first, I'll go over the agenda and share a bit about what you can expect today. So I'll start by giving a brief LGO program introduction. Then we'll talk a little bit about the internship process and how it works. And then we're joined by some alumni and current students, so we'll have a panel from them, and you can hear a little bit about their experience in the LGO program. And finally, we will save some time at the end for some Q&A. So we encourage you to use the Q&A box to ask your questions today, and we'll do our best to get to all of them. I'm also joined today by a few of my colleagues, and I'd love for them to introduce themselves. So maybe if Eileen and then Sharona and then Ted would do a quick introduction, that would be great.
Great, thanks, Pam. Hi, everybody. I'm Eileen Jacob. I'm the admissions director for the LGO program, and looking forward to connecting with all of you today to learn more about internships. Thanks for joining.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sharona Bollinger. I'm also with the LGO admissions team. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, folks. My name is Ted Equi. I'm on the Director for Academics, Research, and Career Engagement, so touching across the full spectrum of the experience. And I can share a little bit about the research part of the program.
Great. So first I'll start with a bit of an LGO program introduction. So as you might know, LGO is our 2-year dual degree where students earn an MBA and a Master of Science in one of 7 engineering disciplines. The mission of the program is really to educate leaders to address the world's most challenging operations and high-tech problems. And there's really an overall focus on operations and data analytics. But the LGO curriculum is customizable to fit your interests, and it would also depend on your engineering discipline. LGO is a fully integrated program with our own dedicated program staff to include academic advising, career advising, financing, and also internship placement. LGO students are full members of the MIT School of Engineering and also full MIT MBA students. The LGO program begins in early June each year with a cohort of about 45 to 50 students. And then after the summer core, LGOs fully integrate into the Sloan MBA program in the fall, while also taking engineering classes. Typically, they take 1 per semester. For admissions, we're looking for students with a STEM background. So you don't need to have worked as an engineer or even studied engineering, but we're just looking for that STEM background. Something that makes LGO unique is that we work with 25 partner companies. And each admitted student actually receives a very generous LGO fellowship. The fellowship is a range, and it depends on the strength of your application, but it covers on average about 50% of your tuition over the 2 years. And each LGO student completes an internship at a partner company, which is what we'll be talking about today. So with that, my colleague Ted Equi, who you just met a moment ago, sort of manages the internship process at LGO, and I'm going to let him talk a little bit about the LGO internship.
Thanks, Pam. The term internship is historical. Recently, one of the faculty members referred to it. It's really doing field research. When you think about your master's degree, the research lab is the operations at one of the partner companies. I see Andrew and Liza and Nicole, each one of them doing their internships at a different location, different companies. So the internship is doing work, generating projects, generating results for the company, but also it's the basis for your master's research. So unlike a 6-month intern, a 3-month internship that you go into a company, you get some exposure to it. The other part of the internship is learning about the company and really being the eyes and ears for the rest of your class into that company, because not every student can do an internship at every partner company. I'll let the panelists speak more to this, but the cohort gets very tight, and somebody could be doing their internship at one company and they say, you know, my classmate, this would be a perfect cultural fit, or they have the right background for this. So that's the other ingredient, because you'll do more than just your single project at the company. The timeline, you'll come in, do a summer and fall. In normal times, we get about 60% of the students will then go off on a 6-month. So I think about the experience as 6 semesters. You're here for 2 summers, 2 falls, 2 springs. And either you do a spring summer research engagement at a partner company, or you do a summer fall research engagement. And Andrew and Liza, you're both doing the summer fall, right? Okay. So the how do we get those projects? We actually run the process through student committees. A lot of what you will see as you enter the program, the students help shape their own experience. So the Student Internship Committee will work to develop a profile of the class, communicate that with the companies in hopes of getting projects that are aligned. And we're continuing to create forums for the students to express their interests, have to meet families, meet the partners. LGO is like a family, but and you really start to meet the partners your first summer. We have summer company days where the companies come in and you first learn about them. You may not know all 25 partners, but our goal is to have students be well informed of the various opportunities. Some companies are holding companies, some are private equity, and I think Andrew's doing an internship at one of the operating companies within private equity. The matching algorithm is similar to residents and hospitals. You will interview with a broad number of projects and create your rank list. And the companies and the projects, it's really on a project basis, not a company basis. They'll interview a wide number of students and they'll create a rank list. And we put it into a 2-way matching algorithm that's used in hospital choice, as school choice. And so that's really a different than a standard, you have to go out and find your internship. So the program sources, and we always have about, I would say, 10 to 20% more projects than we have students. So there's more choice than restricted. It's good to see Nicole on here. Biological engineering, chemical engineering, and aeroastro, there are fewer number of projects. So those students in those departments are in a more closed market, where we ask our partner companies to generate projects that meet those departments' needs, and they'll be having sets of interviews with specific content. The students, there may be a handful of projects that are also in open market. Those students don't have an advantage over those, but the companies say, we want to talk to all the students. We want to talk to the MECIs, the EECSs. We do have chemical or biological or aeroastro content, but the closed market, they would only talk to a subset. So it's a very fair and open process. And for the most part, I would say 90% of the people get their something in their top 5, 10%, that still says 10 to 15% get below their top 5, but it's still generally a pretty exciting, and all the projects are vetted and ensure that they are thesis worthy type projects. So it's not going to be a make work project. And I'll end with saying that on average, there's about a 50 to 100 to 1 ROI for projects that students do. So the companies, that's where your fellowship is coming. They pay a fee to have the research done. And many of the students generate project value for the company that is then taken forward. So it's a quick overview. Hopefully that makes sense.
Great, thanks so much, Ted. So now we will move into our panels. So we're joined today by 2 recent alumni and 2 current students. So I would love for us to start with some introductions. If each of the panelists could introduce themselves, say what your engineering department is, where you did your internship, and then just like a little overview about what your project was. Why don't we start with Lisa, then Andrew, Nicole, and then Audrey.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Su. I'm an LGO 21. My engineering degree focus is in civil and environmental engineering, and I'm currently working at Nike within their commercial analytics group. My project for the next 6 months, I guess, is really focused on trying to identify and quantify risk across the end-to-end supply chain. So my project was really kind of inspired by COVID learnings. And so that's kind of where I'll be studying and researching for the next few months.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Rodriguez. I'm a mechanical engineering class of 21 LGO, and I'm also currently doing my internship like Lisa. Mine is through the LGO partner LFM Capital, which is one of the private equity firms that Ted mentioned. And I'm working at a portfolio company that focuses on industrial enclosures and electrical power distribution manufacturing. And my project is focused around lean engineering, innovation, and process development for this company, which has kind of grown from being a small business and is at that transition point to kind of grow into a larger corporation.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Oliver and I am an LGO 20, just graduated in June. My engineering department was biological engineering and my internship company was at Amgen, where I was focused on improving a step in their manufacturing process called harvest, which is when they capture the product from the bioreactor. So my project was, and I can get into this in the Q&A, was empirical in basis. So I was in the lab gathering my own data on a specific question related to harvest, and then just did some analysis on that.
And hello everyone, my name is Audrey. I'm also like Nicole in LGO 20, so just graduated. I was specializing in civil and environmental engineering at MIT during my time in LGO, and I did my internship at AstraZeneca in the UK. The topic was really to study the supply chain of one of the key ingredients into a lot of their medicines, and to try to figure out how we might be able to help them manage the relationships with these suppliers to drive speed and reduce cost overall of holding the material.
Great, thanks guys. So what factors influenced how you ranked your internship project? What was the most important factor to you personally when deciding about your internship?
I can start. So for me, company was huge for me. So I knew one of the main reasons that I came to LGO was to pivot from, I was in technology consulting and to biotech. So really get hands-on experience in the biotech industry. So one of the many things that drew me to the LGO program was their partnership with Amgen and other companies in biotech and pharma. And so Amgen was at the top of my list because of future job prospects.
So Nicole, just the slide that's up shows that was what you were doing before LGO,
Yes.
being the technology. At this point, you're at Amgen? Or
Yeah, yeah. So I converted it to a full-time offer. So plan was executed, right? And I am currently started at Amgen actually last week, and I'm working in a strategy group within their operations practice.
Yeah, and maybe to build on what Nicole mentioned, I actually went into the ranking process with two sort of priorities. So like company was also very important to me because I really wanted to see if I was a good match for a given partner company. But also there was an aspect of me that just wanted to kind of expand my learning. So kind of what Ted had mentioned, like the internship is a great opportunity to just explore another either industry or like field of study. And so just the project itself, and the content of the project and research was a huge driver for selecting kind of an intern and ranking an internship opportunity.
Yeah, I was also split between two kind of main factors. Mine were location. I would have preferred to stay in the Boston area, but some of the internships weren't as important to me, which went in my second context, which was project. So project and location, I just tried to find a place I thought would be a good spot, and then a project that I felt like would be interesting and something that outside of the thesis would be developmental for me.
I think I can add one criteria. So I'd agree with a lot of what the other LGOs have said in terms of, you know, when you look at a project, you tend to look at it holistically. So I would look at things like location and project, how interested I was, whether it would allow me to pivot into a new industry. And so all of that factored in. But one of the things that was really crucial for me too, and that wasn't mentioned so far, was in the interview process, you get to meet potentially your future manager. And at the end, when I ranked the projects, I also was thinking about the person that would be my supervisor. And I ranked projects thinking, you know, I met this person, I clicked, and I want to work with them. So even if the project changes, even if it's not the exact industry where I wanted to end up in, I felt like if I had a strong relationship with my manager, then something good would come out of it, and I'd still have a great learning experience. And so that was a huge deciding factor for me too.
Great. Maybe one or two of our panelists can talk a little bit about what the interview and matching process was like for you personally.
I guess I could go. So the interview process, so I selected to only interview for a June start internship. So kind of what Ted mentioned, like there you have an option to interview for a Feb start and or a June start if you don't get a Feb start internship. But I ended up interviewing for 7 different projects at 6 different companies. The interview process is actually, I mean, each interview is only 25 minutes long. So it's a very quick and short opportunity to kind of get a sense of the manager, as Audrey was talking about, but also what the project and the company is like. So it's a very tight sort of turnaround. It's only within a 2-week period or a 1.5-week period. So once I finished kind of interviewing for those projects, then I kind of went through and made a prioritization matrix to kind of rank. But you're kind of squeezing in all the interviews between classes and things. So it's kind of interesting during interview week because, you know, people are kind of rotating in and out of rooms to kind of talk to the different companies, whether it's in person or whether it's virtual. But I think it was a very interesting experience to kind of see many different interview managers in a quick, kind of short period of time.
I'll give a little bit of color to the pre-match process. So I was a biological engineer, and a couple engineering departments do something called pre-match. Not sure if we could change the terminology there or not, Ted, but so, you know, I can't, to fulfill my biological engineering requirements, I couldn't go to some companies. And, you know, as a biological engineer, I definitely also wanted to stay with some companies. So with PreMatch here, sort of a play between talking to the companies that you're interested in and what projects you're interested in, and then come back with some projects that would be tailored towards your engineering requirements. So for me, I communicated with Amgen has a point of contact for LGO internships and LGO in general, communicated my interests, came back with some project rankings, and myself and some chemical engineers kind of ranked it amongst ourselves and were selected. So I didn't really go through the interview process per se in the same way, but definitely.
We still use the same matching algorithm. So there were, as Nicole said, there were 2 or 3 students in her class that were interested in the same project. And so they ranked multiple projects and the company ranked the students. It's just the creation of the projects was more tailored.
Great. How was the transition to being on internship? And maybe you guys could talk a little bit about what kind of support you received from MIT and also from your internship sites.
I can jump in. In my case, it was a little bit different because I was moving countries. And so my internship, as I quickly mentioned, was located in the UK. I got some support from MIT in the form of the international group. And so I don't remember the exact names, but the acronym is MISTY. And so they send out a lot of students to do internships abroad. And so they gave me a lot of information about like who I should call if I ran into a problem in the UK. And I even connected to the MIT UK network and tried to see at the beginning if I could meet a few people. They were mostly in London, so that didn't end up happening, but there's definitely an MIT community no matter where you go. And so I tried to tap into that. And then in terms of obtaining a visa and getting settled into the country, AstraZeneca took care of that. It was surprisingly easy to get a visa to work into the UK. And so very little hurdles there. I was provided a corporate phone when I arrived and my computer very quickly. So the only thing that I really had to worry about was to find an apartment, which was done relatively easily through a website. And I had the chance to fly out a weekend in May and just visit a few apartments and then make my decision until my internship started in June. So both resources that AstraZeneca gave me and that MIT provided were enough for me to be comfortable and to move country relatively easily.
Yeah, I had probably a little bit easier logistical move than Audrey just described, but I think I was fortunate to receive a lot of support on the front end of the internship, both from the company I was going to work at, as well as MIT, just staff and faculty. So being able to tap into a lot of resources from the library to the thesis advisors to other professors who might have experience in the industry helped me, I feel like, arrive and hit the ground running. And my project supervisor was also key in just updating me and starting like a weekly rhythm meeting event between the two of us before the internship started. And so the transition was pretty smooth from my perspective there.
And then if I could just add one more thing, because I also saw a question about, is the internship paid? And sort of related to this is to make the transition to internship, LGO and students on internship actually receive sort of like a housing stipend, as well as like a travel, I don't know if it's called the stipend anymore, Ted, but travel stipend. So you're not paid during the internship. I mean, your fellowship kind of covers that, but you do get additional funds to kind of support the moving cross country or just like finding new housing, things like that. So that's kind of like an additional benefit of kind of making the transition from being an on-campus student back to kind of working in a different city or even a different country.
Great. Was there anything that surprised you about your internship, either your project or just the whole process in general when you became a student?
I guess I could chime in on this one too. So when I guess my experience is similar to, I think, a lot of people's, but when I went through the interview and matching process, there was a particular project that I was interviewing for. But actually, because of changes within the business environment and the global economy, when I actually started my internship, that project completely changed. And so, 2 months prior to even the start of my project, I started communicating with my manager, and she kind of reached out and asked, hey, because of COVID, we've seen some opportunities, like, would you like to draft your own project? So essentially, I came into Nike with the opportunity to really go wherever I wanted within supply chain. And so that was kind of an opportunity for me to just take something that was a little bit more generic, that kind of came out from, I guess, the student surveys when we initially informed the companies what our class was interested in, to specifically what I was interested in. And so that actually worked out really well, because now I'm focusing my research on a topic that I personally think is more interesting than what the project posting was originally. So that was kind of, and a lot of people will find that their scopes will change and kind of their projects will shift over time. And so you do have a lot of opportunity once you're on site to kind of customize to what you're most interested in.
Any other surprises? Or was it pretty much what you guys had expected?
Yeah, I think it's again just building off of the previous point. It's a lot of the surprises is just your scope. So your question starts pretty big, and you have a lot of, I would say, opportunity to shape it how you want to. And I think that can be sort of daunting in the beginning, but it's also a great benefit because you can shape it to an area that you're most interested in, or like people that you most want to work with. So I think I wouldn't necessarily say surprise, but just opportunity of the unknown is how I would more phrase it. And I think, it's just more of a chance to figure out what you really want to do in the company or another company, etc.
Just let me chime in. One of the key factors that we tell the companies is this is research. So the projects that are over-defined don't allow the students to really explore and define. So by definition, we want those projects and the students to really put their signature on the project itself. It's not just, okay, we've already come up with a solution, we need somebody to go implement it.
And I can chime in with one last surprise, Pam. It's a bit more on the personal side, but I think that I was moving to a really small town. And so if you know the UK a little bit, I wasn't moving to London or anywhere close to London. I was moving in the Northwest. The biggest city in my region was Manchester, but I was actually 30 minutes out by train from Manchester and living in a small town. And I was expecting that like very few other young folks would be there. I didn't quite know who I'd end up hanging out with outside of work. But as it turns out, I think large employers like the LGO partner companies, they draw in really exceptional talent. And so I ended up making really great friendships at AstraZeneca with other young people that are passionate about their work, and that showed me around this little country town. And so we do walks after work in the evening. The work-life balance on internship was really incredible, something that you kind of forget after a year as a student. And so you can actually make plans on the weekend. And I think that was a great shift. You still have a lot of things to do during your week, but then you can also explore the new area that you move to. And I know some LGOs end up loving the city they do their internship in so much that they move there afterwards. So it's definitely a perk of the internship too, and making great friendships, which was really unexpected for me.
That's great to hear. So we get lots of questions about how the LGO internship is 6 months and a traditional MBA is often a 3-month internship. So could a few of you talk about how you stayed connected with your classmates while you were on internship? Maybe just give some examples.
Yeah, I think our class, is starting our internships and going through them in the middle of COVID, so that changes the connections from what they probably were or could have been to what they are now. But one of our classmates has started like a weekly evening Zoom setup where everyone can dial in and we can all catch up with each other. And it's come when you can or come as you can. So if one week works for you, but the next doesn't, you just try and catch up with your classmates when you can. And then the other thing, which I think Ted spoke of at the beginning, is the interest across your cohort in the various industries. So I've had multiple calls with classmates and friends about, hey, I'm interested in that industry, or what's the company like there. So those have been two of the ways that we've kept up. But I think there's definitely a great opportunity to visit some of the places where other classmates are and see them and connect them. But it's just not very viable in this environment right now. So.
Yeah, last year when I was interning in Boston and pre-COVID, so there is lots of opportunities to both connect with fellow LGOs who are still in Boston, as well as the MBA students. So I had a really close core team on the MBA side, and we would get dinner like every other week. I roomed with fellow students. That was another way. And then I also interned with LGO students, which was really great. Both Amgen has 2 locations primarily where people internship, both Boston, where I was, and also Thousand Oaks. And one example of connections even across distance is we would set up weekly calls just to touch base on how we're doing with our internship and also just how we're doing in general. And it's actually something that we're continuing into full time because a lot of my classmates, or 3 others, joined Amgen as well. So a great way to connect.
And there are clusters like in Seattle. There we have Amazon, we have Boeing. Well, there are some operating companies. Oregon's not that. So there are various areas, even down in Tennessee, where Nike has a distribution center. We have Nissan. We have a couple of the LFM companies down there. So AIP companies. So the students sort of do self-assembly. It's not something that we need to do as a program. The cohort's so tight that those networks sort of weave themselves.
Great. And how has your internship played a role in your learning experience in the program?
So for me, I see the internship almost as an extension of like action learning at Sloan in MIT. So if you don't know what action learning is, it's really just hands-on application of some of the theory and ideas that you learn within the classroom. And so I've taken a lot of like network design, optimization, supply chain classes. And so now all of that is coming together within my research at Nike. And so it's really cool to just see how theory comes to life, because in my mind it was so simple, and then I came to Nike and was like, oh, data is actually really hard to get and you need to really clean it and scrub it, and you just learn all the complexity that exists within real companies around some of these basic fundamental concepts. So for me, it's been like a great experience to see real application of the learning that I've received through the LGO program.
I can talk maybe a little bit about the research component, and I think it ties back to what both Lisa and Nicole mentioned earlier, a little bit jumping into the unknown. And so I feel like as a consultant, I was kind of expecting, this project to be very different. And, I thought research would be like, I don't know, more structured or something, but it's the complete opposite. You've got a lot of flexibility to explore. And that taught me a whole lot, because what I'd learned, like the basic principles that Lisa just mentioned, helped me make sense of what looks at first like something incredibly complex. And so because some concepts at MIT had been hammered in, and I knew about certain relationships between like inventory and costs, those concepts really helped me make sense of what I was seeing and the patterns that I was seeing at the company when I was talking to people, so mostly through interviews. And so the internship really contributed to me conducting research for the first time. And it wasn't just a consulting project, it was much more, because I was leveraging a lot of theoretical knowledge to help improve this situation. And so I thought that was great. And as you can see maybe on the slide, it has actually led me to consider a complete career shift, and I'm going to do a PhD after LGO. And so the internship was a huge learning experience in that sense. It was the first time that I got to conduct research, and I liked it so much. I'm going to try to keep doing more.
Yeah, I think one thing that I heard through Audrey and Lisa's comments also is just the applicability like across the spectrum. So like even the classes that you didn't know were going to be valid, you find out through some kind of like unanticipated way that that's going to be where your project needs to take you. So a couple examples are like system dynamics. Like you don't think about system dynamics and how it plays into lean manufacturing, for example, but it guides all their process flows and how people behave within the system, or even like a Python class. Like I didn't do much coding before I came to LGO, but just the basic Python class we took over the summer, I feel like has allowed me to explore more coding solutions to process problems that exist, even if it's in other programming languages. So.
Great. So I'm not sure if any of the panelists were on the student committee that helps with internships, but maybe Ted could share just a little bit about the student committee and just how that works.
I think Liza was a member of the committee. Essentially, the committee defines and runs the process of sourcing. The committee has multiple subcommittees. They have surveys. That's how you develop the profiles. And they actually serve the year ahead. So the LGO 22s just finished doing the career interest surveys for the LGO 21s, which we will then send out to the partners. So they also developed the code that does all the scheduling all the interviews into 2 weeks and fits them in amongst the classes. So the students basically just say, I want to interview with these projects, and here's my availability. And the committee takes that, and there's a scheduling committee. And I would say probably one of the key things is they do the content review. So they're reviewing the projects that come in. and saying, okay, which departments, there's a rubric, but which department's going to qualify for this project? If there's something that's clarification, or the students say, hey, this doesn't land, or this doesn't make sense, they feed it back to the companies and say, you need to improve this, or can you clarify these areas? So the internship committee is serving the rest of their class. So it's about the mechanics of having a good experience and generating a lot of good projects that are going to be of broad interest to the class.
Great. So it looks like we have some good questions coming in from the audience. So my colleague Sharona will ask a few of those now.
Yeah, so Audrey touched on this a bit, but maybe others of you could also weigh in on this. What kind of continuity did you find between your coursework going into the internship, and then maybe after the internship as well? Like, what did the internship experience bring to your coursework once you had completed it?
So I can't really speak to after internship, but I guess going into internship, like spring semester, I explicitly picked classes that I thought would be relevant to an internship. So I had like a network design class. Because of COVID, actually, MIT offered free certificates to take edX classes as well. So I'm actually continuing taking some of these like network design, supply chain classes that are really focused around modeling, as well as like basic concepts for network design, which are directly applicable to my project. So they actually tie in really well. And I think for me, the classes actually kind of informed where I wanted to take my project, because I found the topic really interesting. And so when I went into Nike and started sort of shaping the direction of my project, that really informed kind of my research. So I think that's kind of a direct tie into coursework into research.
And then I can speak a little bit to the after. So during my internship, kind of like what Audrey was saying, I kind of learned a little bit more about what I wanted to do within Amgen. So I knew by the end of my internship what group I wanted to go into, and talk to them about what kind of skills I still needed to close while I still had a year left at school. So some of those things were finance. I never took really many finance courses before that, so made sure I fit that in. Some higher level strategy classes, and then just a biomanufacturing class, because I was focused on one part of the process but wanted some more in-depth knowledge about another part of the process from leaders in the research field at MIT. So I think the internship can kind of, like we've said previously, give you better insight into what you want to do after, and then you can kind of use that last year or last semester to fill any gaps to make you prepared for that future job.
Great, thank you. Another question from the audience is, could you speak a bit to the relationship between internships and full-time recruiting? So this might be more a question for Ted, just because you have the historical knowledge of seeing many classes go through this and seeing where their careers go afterwards. But also if any of the alumni have kind of specific instances of the internship playing into your recruiting after LGO.
I'll let the students go first.
So sorry, the question was just related to internships to full-time?
Yeah, if there was any connection between your full-time recruiting experience and your internship experience?
Definitely varies by person, but I'll answer from my perspective. It's a huge, I mean, I interned at Amgen and then now I'm working full-time at Amgen. So I knew Amgen was one of the companies I wanted to look at. I loved it when I was interning there, and then that was converted to a full-time offer. And based on my knowledge, I think most internships do come with a full-time offer. And then it's just, up to the students' discretion, and then other LDOs, your inputs and learning about the company. So for me, it was a pretty straight path.
I guess the partners tend to give close to 80%, 75 to 80% offers to their interns. Audrey's pursuing her PhD, but I know AstraZeneca wanted to hire her, and they supported her going on for her PhD. But the partners really look at it as an opportunity, but they also are looking at the whole class. So your internship experience, even if it's not at a company that you're going to, is an important part of telling your story. You've solved a very complex problem. You've gone in, you've demonstrated leadership. So it's a practice field which creates a good platform for you to go through the interviewing process. And I will say that the going through and doing the matching, somebody may be matched to a different company, but if the company ranked that student high, they stay in touch with them. And I know that this happened multiple years, but Amgen, I'm just choosing Amgen as an example, but they said, oh, the student got matched to Novartis. Novartis was once a partner. Well, they stayed in touch with that student, and when the student came for full-time recruiting, they were pre-recruiting, and Amazon did the same thing. A student got matched to a different company, and then they didn't see that student sign up for interviews. They reached out and said, hey, David, we think you're a very great fit. And he said, well, I want to go to Atlanta. There's no opportunities in Atlanta. And they said, Amazon's everywhere. And, he got hired on. He's in their Atlanta office. He's one of their key leaders. So I think both the interview process as well as your experience definitely is a platform for full-time.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I guess the student, it's about three to one offers. I mean, the students have offers to choose from as LGOs. So, the where you do your internship, but you don't have to say that's where I did my internship. So that's the only place that I'm going to get an offer.
Great, thank you. I guess this might be a question for the recently graduated LGOs, but can you speak a bit to the thesis component of the internship? So your experience with the thesis, and then maybe the 21s can talk about how they've been starting to think about their thesis and what the next year looks ahead for them.
So I'm happy to talk a little bit about the thesis. In my case, I have not started while I was in internship. And so if Lisa and Andrew have started, they are ahead of the game, because I think a lot of the work while I was on internship, as Ted described it earlier, it was still field research. I was still like collecting as much information as I could during the 6 months and making sure that the inputs into my models were correct and things like that. And then I made the most of my last semester to write the thesis. And it was plenty of time, just using, the month of January, IAP as you want it. And I think the thesis writing was actually a great learning experience too, in my case, to have to summarize everything that I had learned while I was on the field and to try to explain the theory behind the models that I had built. And so it helped, push the project even a little bit further, even once I was gone. And so it's a really interesting part of our internship, and it's quite specific to LGOs because other, internships don't have the thesis component. So to have to write about the theory of what you're doing and really synthesize your ideas, it was a great exercise in communication, and also pushed the project a little bit further as I refined my thinking.
And I would add, it was also a great time to collaborate across classes and within your class. So all of the partner companies, unless they're new, have previous LGOs that have been there and have written internships there. So I know for myself personally, I set up a couple touch points with someone that worked at the company previously, a standout student from the class of 19, and she helped me sort of frame the thesis, because thesis writing was new to me, and sort of eat the elephant in pieces, and just getting her feedback throughout the process was very helpful. And I know my classmates were also just immensely helpful in my year, and just supporting each other, giving feedback, etc. So just kind of illustrates how close the class is, both your class and then above and beyond. Everyone's there to help.
There is some humility going on here. I just wanted to make note that Nicole and Audrey were both nominated for Best Thesis. So they did some outstanding work, and Audrey was one of the dual winners. So there's very high quality from the engineering. They have to be nominated by both of their advisors. So some pretty spectacular work is generated by LGOs.
I guess just really quickly, because I know we're at the end of the hour, but there are sort of deliverables and like time gates during your internship to make sure you are progressing on your thesis. So there's definitely structure in place to make sure you're kind of moving in the right direction. And I mean, everyone has different setups with their thesis advisors, but I do like weekly updates with my advisors to make sure that kind of I'm tracking in the right direction. So there's a lot of support throughout the entire process.
Great, and with that, we're just about out of time, so I just wanted to say thank you to our panelists for joining us today. Thanks to Ted and my colleagues. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. We have a number of upcoming events that are all virtual that you can register for on our website. As always, feel free to email us if you have any specific questions about the application or the program in general. But thanks again for joining, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.